welcome back. And also, if you see me looking up at the camera, if the Instagram people, if you see me looking up at the camera, hey there, my Thoth Paulo. Hey there. If you see me looking up here, it's not that I'm not looking at you guys down here. Or if I'm looking down here, it's not that I'm not looking at you guys up here. I've got two cameras. I've got one on my phone, and then I've got my webcam here. That way I can be on Instagram and also on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. But obviously, Instagram doesn't allow us to stream directly to Instagram unless we're doing a live show. So we're going to be doing a live show here. So, hey, how's it going? How's your happy Sunday, Emhotep? How are you doing? So like I said, we're going to be getting started here soon. Last week I talked a little bit about why I wanted to do these on Sunday. And you may think or say, well, it's because that's what all churches or religious places do. And if you know me, you know that I'm not that type of traditional person, because everybody's doing it, right? There has to be some sort of thought that goes into it. Oh, no problem, man. No problem. Or I'm sorry. I didn't mean if you're not a man or woman or not. Sorry about that. I don't know. I kind of looked at the name and I can't see the picture, but I looked at the name and I don't know. I thought Pablo, and I think a man popped in my head. Sorry about that. But no problem at all. If you have any questions at all, feel free to leave a comment or just do something in chat. He, him. Cool. Awesome. Okay, good. At least my senses are acute right now, right? That's good. So, like I was saying, the reason we're doing this on Sunday, if you haven't already watched my last show, the Ancient Tree of Life show from not last week, but 2 weeks ago, it would have been the first show since I've taken this hiatus. It talks a bit about Sunday, what Sunday means, Sunday, the name Sunday, day of the sun, that actually means something. It's one of the 7 sacred mysteries in these spiritual systems. The sun represents, it's symbolic and it's also physical, but it represents the self. It represents regeneration and rejuvenation. And that's why Sunday is the beginning of the week. Because it's where you regenerate or rejuvenate yourself, your soul, your spirit. That way, you have that energy for going forth into the coming days, into the rest of the week, right? The symbol for Sunday is actually, it's a circle. It's a circle with a dot in the middle, right? Like, I don't mean to say it like that, but it's like a circle with a dot in the middle, right? And it represents the sun, but more so it represents completion. It represents the coming and going of all things, the beginning and the end, the alpha and the omega, if you will. So it represents the beginning and the end, which, like I said, it's the end of the former week, of the prior week, but it's the beginning of the new week. It's the end of your old self, your past self, even if it was the last few days, and it's the beginning of the new self, which are those days coming forward, right? And so Sunday is about regeneration and rejuvenation of the self, of you, right? The beginning of a new, I don't want to say a new life because that sounds too grandiose, right? It sounds too great, but it's the beginning of things, right? And that's why it's at the beginning of the week. So we'll just kind of leave it at that, right? So before we get started, any questions? Like I said, I know I've been gone for about a minute, and sorry guys, I was shaving and I cut myself, so it's not like a mustache trying to grow in. It's actually the skin trying to heal itself. Sorry about that. But any questions so far? Let me make sure we got. I got my chat systems up. Okay. I use a lot of technology because I'm a technology person, and sometimes these things don't play well, meaning they just don't work at times, and it can be a drawback, a big drawback. But then it allows us to communicate. It allows us to be more and extend ourselves. So that's the caveat. I did a little bit of a technology rant in my last video. If you want to go watch that one, you can. Yeah, I'm a technology person. I'm an IT person by trade, but I've always had a interest in the spiritual. And as I've gotten older, it's just become more. It's deepened, shall we say? So we're gonna go ahead and get started. Once again, this is RaEA Eason. Sorry, this is. I do gaming as well. I have a gaming channel, and that's how I start my gaming channel intro. Sorry, you guys. But this is RaEA with the Ancient Tree of Life channel and show. Today is a little bit more special because instead of being a little bit more arbitrary, what I'm wanting to do is we're going to be going over the Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean. All right, we're going to be going over the Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean, if you can see that. It's a quick book. It's not like huge. It's not a huge tome, but it is a heavy read. Don't judge a book by its cover or by its depth, because this book will like make your mind spin. And that's really what you want to do. You want to get your mind spinning. That way you open up your mind in order to understand the mysteries and the possibilities that the book talks about, and really about the world that we live in and the world that is inside of you. It's a great book. I've read it multiple times. I'm rereading it now. I've probably read it 3 times prior to this. And this is one of those books that when you read it the first time, there's probably about 99.9% of it you just didn't get. It's just how it is. Your brain, your mind is not seated in order to fully understand the whole realm of what this book has in it, right? So what it does is it lays a foundation, and hopefully you already have a foundation. By foundation, I mean an understanding of some sort of spiritual system or something, right? Maybe you know how to meditate, maybe even just a little bit. Maybe you use tarot cards or something like that in order to kickstart those esoteric or those metaphysical engines, right? Or let's just say, for instance, you don't have any background or anything. This book will probably then blow your head all the way, just all over the place, pieces of like brain material all over the place, right? So this is one of those great books that I love to read. Because it's quick and it's short, and all the rest of the tomes that I have are like thick and just out there. And this is a good starter, I would think. And what led me to wanting to talk about this, do a discussion about this tonight, is because sometimes I ask myself, if I was a newbie, if I was a person that was coming across this information, and they were just like, well, this is great and all, but how do I get started? How do I do this? How do I open up? How do I walk with the divine? How do I connect with the Naturu? How do I open up my senses? How do I have more intuition? How, right? And that's a big question, simply because if you're a person like me, and I'm still just sort of a novice at a lot of this, because we've got like tens of thousands of years of this information out there. But if you were a person like me, you've been reading so much and you've been doing so much work that it may be, you might recommend something that would be too much for a person to consume, right? And I've had this question before. Even my sister asked me a couple of, probably about a month or so ago. She's like, what would I read? And I was like, that's a good question. And so it always has me thinking, what is the best question, the best way to get started? What's the best way to answer that question? When I first got started in all of this, I got started with Wicca, right? It was the first thing that came to me. I had a friend that was Wiccan, and he introduced it to me. It seemed interesting. It had some aspects of it that I could understand and that I could grasp. And so that was my first introduction to it. And so to some people, I tell them, I say, okay, you need to learn that. One of the first books that I read was how to be a practitioner, right? How to begin, how to open up, how to how to open up yourself to understand other things, right? And one of those books I recommend, and I recommend it. And sometimes people, they pick it up and sometimes they don't. They're not one to get involved or learn from the Wiccan perspective. I completely understand. It's a different framework. It's a different cultural piece of cultural work. It's more so European and even Western, more heavily Western influenced than, say, some of the other ancient systems like the ancient Kemetic Egyptian systems or the ancient Meso-Sumerian systems, which are African based. So there's that whole balance of, okay, I have to know who it is that I'm talking to and what they might be interested in, and then I have these tomes, these books that might be the best ones for them then to get started. By sense that they're more interested in, say, like Celtic, Irish, maybe European, British cultural framework, then I may recommend the Wiccan stuff. If they're more like wanting African-based culture and spirituality, well, then we look at the more Kemetic Egyptian or the Meso-Sumerian information, which there's a lot of it out there, and that stuff kind of blows some people away. And you have to know where to get started when it comes to using that information. And I've got several books, and all of them are pretty deep. So the great question is, which book do you start with? What tome do you start with? What information do you start with? And after a couple of nights ago, I was laying on my couch, and then I was thinking, I just got done with work, and I was laying on my couch, and I was thinking, okay, I could either flick TV on, or a part of my brain was like, or you could read the Emerald tablets, and you could get caught up in the land of the spirit, right? You could work on that. And a part of me in that moment was being lazy, and I was like, oh, but I always do this. And I was not wanting to do it. I would just want to lay there and watch some TV, right? Let the brain just sort of just be entertained without thinking. And on my smart TV, this picture popped up, right? This picture of a place on Earth, right? And I looked up and I looked at it, and I was like, I looked closer and I was like, oh my God, that's the what they call the Eye of the Sahara. And some people call the Eye of the Sahara, they say that is where Atlantis may have been after it sank, the whole sinking of Atlantis, right? And so then I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I'm feeling foolish for even wanting to just watch regular TV instead of pick up my Emerald tablets and dive into it. But I'm sitting there and I'm marveling at that. I'm pondering, should I read this book or should I zone out to some entertainment-based TV, which is not going to help me in any way, shape, or form other than getting out of my mindset right now, right? And then what pops up on my TV is this symbol that represents Atlantis, which we've directly linked Thoth or Tahuti to, and that's where this book is this book was linked to that image, right? The Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean, right? Which I highly recommend. Since we're going to be discussing this, I would highly recommend anybody pick up this book. It's really, really, really good. It's probably, you know what? I'm going to count how many pages there are. There are 80 pages in this book. 80 pages. And there's even translations in the book, which I don't recommend looking at the first time around. But yeah, there's 80 pages in that book. And it pretty much the book goes over quite a few things in those 80 pages. Like I said, it blows your mind. But I think that has to be done in order to open up yourself to the knowledge, the wisdom, the eternal knowledge and wisdom that's out there. Because the things that we know, that we think that we know, that we've gotten, that we've learned and have become accustomed to knowing, sometimes we feel that is all that is possible, or anything that may be linked to it is all that is possible, instead of realizing that there's much more out there. So I think this book is probably one of the best easy starter books to get started with, simply because it's short. It's not going to take you years or months to complete it. You could probably finish it in a month. You could probably finish it in a week, but a month if you're busy doing other things, right? And it will open up your mind to other possibilities, and more importantly, asking other questions. And those other questions will link to other realizations, other information, other knowledge, other wisdom, and so forth and so forth and so forth. So I definitely recommend the Emerald Tablets of Thoth The Atlantean. It's a great book. Like I said, totally mind-blowing, great. One of the pages, actually, let's see, right on the back, it says, "The history of the Emerald Tablets is strange and beyond the belief of modern scientists. Their antiquity is stupendous, dating back some 36,000 years BC. Yes, that's 36,000 years BC. The writer is Thoth, an Atlantean Priest-King, who founded a colony in ancient Egypt after the sinking of the mother country," which, in that sinking of the mother country, is Atlantis. So this is why, if you're interested in ancient Kemetic Egyptian spirituality and spiritual systems, this book, the reason why I recommend it is because it is the place where Egypt was born. Thoth would have been, and Atlantis would have been Thoth would have been the uncle of Kemet, of Egypt, and Atlantis would have been sort of akin to the mother. Well, and maybe the father, and then Egypt itself, the land. Kemet, it's the land would have been the mother. But Thoth and Atlantis had a hand in, and whether you want to see this as lore, whether you want to see this as truthful, that's up to you. But the more that you embrace and understand, and dare I say believe, that's when the rest of the fragmented pieces of this story come into play. Simply because that's how the knowledge and the history was hidden. If you don't believe, the rest of the pieces are not magnetized. They don't come to you. I guess that's the best way to explain it. Your belief systems magnetize other things to attract to you. And that's a good thing and it's a bad thing. It can be a good thing because it allows information to come to you without you needing to think about it. All you have to do is believe. You just have to have the fire in your heart. And these things will be pulled towards you. The bad thing about this is that it will pull things towards you that you believe in that are not necessarily true. And so what I've found in some other information that I've read, some other text books, is that you must confirm the information that comes to you. You can't simply allow information to come to you, take it as true because, well, it came to you and you read it, or you experienced it. Experience is a little bit different, it's a different thing. But you have to be able to verify and validate any information that comes to you. And I don't necessarily mean by going back and researching and reading and looking in history, because history is written by the victors of wars. Not most of the time. That's most of the time. History is written by the victors of wars. Sometimes it's not, though. And when it's handed down, like through generations, sometimes it can be more factual than those historical accounts written by those who conquered and slaughtered other societies in order to expand their wealth and their dominion, right? So you have to be able to verify and validate information, and you can do this. You can do this through history. You can do this by reading other information, but you also have to pair that with an esoteric verification or validation. And by that, what I mean is you have to do a lot of meditation, tarot work, tree of life work. You use these other systems to confirm or verify the information that you've come across. And what that does is when you use these other systems, those systems make you magnetize as well. But by you focusing on these other systems and working towards the truth of the matter, then the truth will be magnetized to you. So if that thing that came to you that you thought was true and you're trying to get it verified, if by working with the Tree of Life, if working with the tarot, if working with religious and spiritual practices brings information that confirms the initial information that you received, then it's possible that it's true, and continue to be open to other information that may confirm or validate. You're always trying to confirm or validate information. If not, you will lose yourself in this work, in this type of work. You will lose yourself in the darkness of your own self-created lies. This is where we have a lot of people, and you've heard about them throughout history, and you may even know some people around you, that they dabble in this stuff. They don't confirm anything. They heard it, they saw it, they read it, and they just wanted to believe it. They didn't meditate. They didn't work with their deities. They didn't work with anything outside of themselves to verify, validate, and grow with this or discard it. They just took it at face value, and they kept building on this. They kept building on this bad information, and next thing you know, they're lost. They're totally gone and lost. They can't relate to anybody. They can't relate to themselves. They've embarked on a path, a downward spiral path, that they may or may not be able to come back from. That has been the danger of working with this type of work ever since it was first created, because you're dealing with the fabric of the mind, you're dealing with the soul, you're dealing with the universe. You're trying to build information off of intangible information. And if you don't do it correctly, you will build inaccurate, intangible information systems that don't support themselves. And like the tower in the tarot card, it'll fall. Guaranteed. That which is not built on a firm foundation is guaranteed to fall and burn, like in the tarot card, right? Which that card actually represents the Tower of Babel, or the Tower of Babel in Babylon. And there's a whole other system and lore linked to that scenario. I believe the tower was the Tower of Marduk, and it fell. It got struck by God or whatever. But once again, that's a secret. That's a key right there. I mean, you've had the tarot. If you've used the tarot and you knew that story, and once again, the Ancient Tree of Life channel is about ancient Kemetic Egypt and ancient Meso-Sumeria, ancient Meso-Sumer, which is Sumeria, which is where Babylon was founded. The conquerors of Babylon founded their new regime and their new way of life in Sumer, and Marduk was Babylonian. Marduk was not Sumerian. Marduk was not. It was not Sumerian at all. The Babylonians created Marduk in favor of their kings, right? So there's a whole other lore and story attached to that, which is why that card represents the falling tower card, because it was built incorrectly. But that's a whole other story. If you're interested, you can watch my other YouTube videos on Marduk and ancient Sumer. All right, so once again, we're going to get back to the Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean, right? That's kind of what I just want to show this a couple times. That way you can kind of see. So what makes this book so important or interesting, right? Why, and I asked myself this the other day, why did I make this the cornerstone of this discussion, and also of it's a part of the framework that I use, a part of my personal spiritual religious system. The book I'm not overly religious about. The information in the book, the spiritual systems, allow me to become more religious in my life, but only through the information. And that's a big thing to understand, you guys. Information should fuel you and make you better. It should be like adding gasoline to the fire. The information should be the gasoline. The fire should be your burning desire to learn, right? Thoth even mentions in the book about how you need to develop a flame that is like the great flame, or a fire that's like the great flame. They use contrasting words in the book in order to allow you to understand that there is a greater flame, the eternal flame, and then there is your flame, which is a smaller piece of that larger frame or flame. So sometimes they interchange it with flame, the eternal flame, or the eternal fire, and then your sacred flame or your sacred fire, your internal fire, right? And so the reason that this book is probably one of my most favored is because it goes back beyond Kemet. It goes back beyond Egypt. It is, in it are the seeds or the mysteries of how the ancient people of Kemet may have thought, may have reverenced, and how they may have been spiritual. And then granted, over the years, over the ages, over thousands of years, it would have changed into something else different, because that's how all societies drift. But in the beginning, there would have been a core understanding that would have transferred from Atlantis to ancient Kemet, and that's what Thoth actually talks about in the beginning of the book. So let's just go ahead and read a little bit of this. Okay, let's see. All right, so this is the preface here, right? And I'll kind of just go over the preface. The preface, it's if you have not been able to grab this book and you've not read it or listened to it or anything, then these pages could seem like just sort of mind-blowing. But here we have the preface to the original emerald tablets of Thoth the Atlantean. The history of the tablets translated in the following pages is strange and beyond belief of modern scientists. Their antiquity is stupendous, dating back over 36,000 years BC. The writer is Thoth, an Atlantean Priest-King who founded a colony in ancient Egypt at the sinking of the mother country. He was the builder of the Great Pyramid of Giza, erroneously attributed to Cheops. In it, he incorporated his knowledge of the ancient wisdom and also securely secreted records and instruments of ancient Atlantis. So just from that paragraph, we've got like a little bit of a history on who Thoth was, place and time, what his title was, and also there's a reference to the Great Pyramid, right, and Egypt, right? So that's really interesting, right? And as we go on to the next paragraph, it says, for some 16,000 years, he ruled the ancient race of Egypt from approximately 50,000 BC to 36,000 BC. At that time, the ancient barbarous race among which he and his followers had settled had been raised to a high degree of civilization. Thoth was an immortal. That is, he had conquered death, passing only when he willed, and even then not through death. His vast wisdom made him ruler over the various Atlantean colonies, including the ones in South Central America. Once again, second paragraph kind of talks a little bit about the past and how old this information actually could be, right? Like 50,000 BC. I mean, that's a long time ago. Once again, if it's not something you're wanting to believe or understand, I completely understand. When I first saw those numbers, I thought, okay, whatever. Yeah, there's somebody's making they're trying to give validation to their work, right? But if you think about it, we really don't know how old the pyramids are. We don't know how old the Sphinx is, Haramakhet. We don't know how long the Egyptians had been there. And we don't know. We know Atlantis did exist, and there are some people who are saying that it was in Greece. which is not accurate. It was never it was not in the Mediterranean. The Greeks have their own stories about Atlantis and battling with them. Their gods battling with them, right? Which means there was a war at various times between Atlantis and the Greeks. And when Atlantis actually fell, the Greeks kind of picked up as like I said, history is written by the victors of war. When Atlantis fell, the Greeks would have said, "Oh, hey, yeah, Zeus defeated them and entrapped. Who is it? I'm going to screw this up, but Zeus basically beat the Atlanteans, is what their story kind of is, and that's not completely true. But they're just taking up that my God is better than yours. That's essentially what that was. Essentially, right? So we don't really know how old Atlantis was, or Kemet, Egypt. There's no idea. So for Atlantis to have been around 50,000 BC, totally possible, completely and totally possible. A whole civilization that existed before the ancient people of Kemet. Very possible, very feasible, right? I mean, if that's something that's hard to swallow, do your research, do your history, look up how long most people think, how long scientists and archaeologists and geologists think Egypt had been there. The earliest Africans, right? Ask yourself, go and doing some research and find out the earliest people who may have been in Africa or may have been in Egypt. How old? How far back did it go, right? And that's where it will have. Then you can reference the Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean and come up with some numbers that might be close to this 36,000 BC or 50,000 BC time frame. That's how you do this verification work that I'm talking about. Hey there, Jay Farmer. How's it going? So we just finished reading the second paragraph of the Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean. That's our discussion here today. And so the third paragraph. Oh, thank you, Jay. I'm glad you like the information. Today we're talking about the Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean, which is one of my favorite reads. It's so beautifully written and perplexing all at the same time. Have you read the book at all? I'll show a picture of it again. I know there's multiple versions of this, but this is the one that I have and that I've read. Just in case you guys. So the third paragraph. When the time came for him to leave Egypt, he erected the Great Pyramid over the entrance to the halls of Amenti, placed in it his records, and appointed guards for his secrets from among the highest of his people. In later times, the descendants of those guards became the pyramid priests. While Thoth was deified as the god of wisdom, the recorder, by those in the age of darkness, which followed his passing. In legend, the halls of Amenti became the underworld, the halls of the gods, where the soul passed after judgment for death. So once again, this is just the third paragraph, you guys, right? Like I said, mind-blowing information, right? There are so many secrets in this that are the roots of ancient Kemet or ancient Kemetic Egypt. It's not even funny. Just the other, like a couple of weeks ago, I follow Bright Insights, right? And he went to Egypt. He was at the pyramids. Was totally jealous. I usually don't get jealous. I was totally jealous, right? And as he was walking around the pyramids, I'm getting these like just ideas, thoughts, feelings. I'm getting an actual like, I don't know, just a flood of information just from him being around the actual physical location and getting a very close bird's eye view, right? And he mentions, he's like, yeah, these pyramids were built for a specific reason, not just to put. They were not tombs like we were taught in school, right? We were told that the Egyptians were so vain, like like the kings of the rest of the world, right? That they were so vain that they built these huge monolithic um, um, uh, buildings or architectural works to bury their kings in, and then they find out there's no dead bodies in it, no mummies, nothing, no kings, right? And so we know from there we've been lied to. We've been lied to by our predecessors, our schooling system, our education system about what was really going on there, right? Because they either didn't know or they didn't know, and they probably didn't know, and they just wrapped it up to these crazy Africans were basically burying their kings in these huge monolithic pyramids that took ages to build, creating having slaves to create these pyramids to put their dead leaders in. And it's like, okay. And then come to find out that's not what happened. Not to mention there's not enough pyramids in Egypt to cover every pharaoh that would have ever lived. There would have to be little triangles all over the place. But that's not where they're digging. That's not where they're looking for pharaohs, right? They're not digging them up where the pyramids are, right? They're digging them up where the rest of the pharaohs are, right? So it's like we were lied to, but it's okay because this information transcends time, which is what Thoth says, and it allows us to discern the truth. So in that third paragraph, Thoth actually talks about Egypt. He talks about Egypt in the first paragraph, in the second paragraph, and in the third, right? It talks about the Great Pyramid. It talks about the Great Halls of Amenti. It talks about the Pyramid Priest, which we've heard about the Pyramid Priest to this day, right? And he talks about the Halls of Amenti being the underworld, right? Which we've heard from Greek mythology, and yeah, mostly from Greek mythology have we heard about the underworld, and I believe also in a lot of other. I think the Norse mythology has an underworld, but it's a little bit different, right? But the mainstream underworld is the one that we learned about from the Greeks, right? So in the book talks about those halls as well, and what I find the most secretive and impressive, not really secretive, it's just not linked together, right? Is that the halls of Amenti have a name which sounds familiar, right? The halls of Amenti. Amen. If you wanted to pronounce it with a more English tongue, you could say Amen T. Halls of Amenti, right? But it's halls of Amenti. And so now we've got this. We have a name for the underworld, right? The halls of Amenti. And then we also have, I believe, in ancient Kemet, we have a deity by the name of Amen, right? And Amen actually represents, his name means the hidden one, or the hidden, right? So if you link the two together, a lot of this information, you have to take your time with, right? It's not a rush, it's not a marathon. You're not trying to learn what the pyramids were used for, so you can go back and brag about it. You're not trying to learn what the Sphinx was created for, or who built it, so you go brag about it. Your soul, your heart, your spirit really wants to know this riddle. It wants to answer it, right? And by unlocking that, you unlock other mysteries. You can understand other things, right? So we now know that the halls of Amenti, which are talked about in the Emerald Tablets, it may be linked. Hold on, my Instagram kind of paused out for a minute. I don't know why. We now know that the halls of Amenti may be linked to the god Amen, the hidden one, right? And so if the two are linked, what does it mean, right? We know that Thoth did bring the mysteries of Atlantis to Kemet, to Egypt, right? And so there has to be a link there between the two. And that's one of the mysteries that you should ponder when you're reading this book. Not consciously. You don't have to consciously ponder it. Just let the information sort of flow to you, right? You read, you learn, you do your spiritual or your meditative work, and information will flow to you. That's as easy as it gets. Okay, so the fourth paragraph. During later ages, the ego of Thoth passed into the bodies of men in the manner described in the tablets. As such, he incarnated 3 times in his last being known as Hermes, the thrice-born, which I kind of have an issue with, but I've kind of gotten over it. So we'll come back to that. So I'm going to reread that. During later ages, the ego of Thoth passed into the bodies of men in the manner described in the tablets. As such, he incarnated 3 times in his last being known as Hermes, the thrice-born. In his incarnation, he left the writings known to modern occultists as the Emerald Tablets, a later and far lesser exposition of the ancient mysteries. So the reason that I said I had an issue with that is because I don't know if I have an issue with the Greeks, right? The Greeks and the Romans. But I know that there was a civilized and highly artistic and spiritual aspect of the Greeks that did work with the people of Egypt and the priest of Kemet, and they would have received this information. They would have, right? So it's very possible that Hermes was Thoth thrice-born. Thrice meaning 3, right? I believe the Hermetic name, the Hermes Kemetic or Hermetic name was Hermes Trismegistus, which means Hermes thrice-born, which means he was the 3rd incarnation of Thoth. Right, so that was why I was saying I had an issue with it, not with anything else that they said, but more so that the Hermes was like Thoth thrice-born, right? Okay, so we're going to go to the next paragraph. The tablets translated in this work are 10, which were left in the Great Pyramid in the custody of the Pyramid Priests. The 10 are divided into 13 parts for the sake of convenience. The last 2 are so great and far-reaching in their import that at present it is forbidden to release them to the world at large. However, in those contained, herein are secrets which will prove of inestimable value to the serious student. They should be read not once, but 100 times, for only thus can the true meaning be revealed. A casual reading will give glimpses of the beauty, but more intensive study will open avenues of wisdom to the reader. And this is kind of what I was touching on earlier about how I've read this many times. This is probably my 4th time reading the Emerald Tablets. Because the first time that you read it, you will not get 99.99% of the information in this book. But there will be that 0.001 or 0.01 that you will get, and that will be a huge flame for you, a huge spark that will open up other doors, that will allow you to see into the mysteries of all these other spiritual systems, because all these other spiritual systems they have an origin. This is what a lot of people don't want to acknowledge. They don't want to acknowledge that maybe, like say for instance, I don't know, ancient Kemetic information, the ancient Kemetic spiritual systems may have come from somewhere prior to them. Some people don't want to observe, say, in Babylon, when Babylon is mostly what we know from history about ancient Sumer. People don't want to realize that the Babylonians didn't create that spiritual system. They integrated and adopted it from the ancient Sumerians, right? And the ancient Sumerians and the ancient Kemetic people have a very similar spiritual system. It's different. They expressed it differently. But I've worked with both intensively, and there are huge similarities on an energetic level between these two, right? And I'll even take it a step further, that the ancient Meso-Sumerians, their lore is very similar to what's in our hands right here, and to the the Emerald Tablets. You have to remember, ancient Atlantis would have been an island. It would have been an island colony, right? And it goes into it a little bit more in the book. They were an island colony, so they're around water, right? In ancient Sumer, one of the main deities in that religion, in that spiritual system, is Ea, right? Ea or Aya, right? Who is the god of wisdom. He's also the god of water. So there is a huge connection between with water, even with ancient Kemet. You've got the Nile River, and there's some text that talks about where Thoth mentions the Ogdoad, which is the first 4 or 8 original primordials, right? The primordial deities. And they have tadpole heads, they have frog heads, tadpoles, right? Which links them to water. So there's this, and I don't want to use this word, but I'm going to. There's this undercurrent, this undertone of water being a very sacred and important part of spiritual life and regular life, real physical life, linked to water. And if you watch any of my videos, you'll hear me talk about how the first 3 major spiritual systems that I work with and that I believe that were the first were ancient Atlantis, ancient Kemet, and ancient Sumer. Those 3 I feel are the heavily influential main 3, right? Atlantis fell by water, the Kemet fell by invasion, and also, yeah, they mostly fell by invasion, but I think their devotion, their work degraded. I don't think they were using the spiritual systems to maintain the order of the balance like they used to, and therefore they were conquered, which is why there's no ancient Kemetic people around. The bloodline is gone that we know of, and it's the current state that owns that area is Islam, is Muslims, right? There's no Africans that are in charge of Kemet anymore, right? So once again, they're totally annihilated. Atlantis totally annihilated. So that's some interesting stuff right there. Okay, so let's continue reading. I'm just going to read the preface, you guys. That's it. Let's see. But now a word as to how these mighty secrets came to be revealed to modern man after being hidden for so long. Some 1,300 years BC, Egypt, the ancient Kim, was in turmoil, and many delegations of priests were sent to other parts of the world. Among these were some of the pyramid priests who carried with them the emerald tablets as a talisman by which they could exercise authority over the less advanced priestcraft of races descended from other Atlantean colonies. The tablets were understood from legend to give the bearer authority from Thoth. Once again, we're seeing Kim, ancient Egypt, or ancient Kim, they spell it Khem, but it's still Kemet, mentioned in the information here. There's a heavy connection between ancient Atlantis and ancient Kemetic Egypt. It also mentions how there was turmoil happening in the country, and the pyramid priests, the people who had this information and was using it over in Egypt or Kemet, they were sent elsewhere because turmoil was breaking out. Now, let's ponder this. Let's think about this. Turmoil is a nice, easy word for something, right? If you were living in a land and you were one of the sacred holders of this information, and turmoil, quote unquote, broke out, and you were scattered over the world, what do you think happened? Well, they just left. They just decided, you know what? I think I'm gonna go get another condo. I'm just gonna go move on over to maybe move over to India, maybe move over to China. Take a boat, because they were the Atlanteans. They would have been seafaring, right? We know they had a huge naval army, right? The Atlanteans. Um, maybe they went over to South America, right? I mean, why was there? Why did these people live, and what turmoil? Obviously, there was an invasion, or there was some sort of uh, rel, um, religious, political, spiritual change going on in Kemet. And if you go back and if you read in history, the history that man wrote, it's filled with this of what happened when invaders came in. Well, they weren't invaders because they wrote the history books, so they weren't invaders. Um, but you'll hear and you'll read about how Kemet was taken over many times, how it was conquered many times, and this is why the pyramid priests, that's why they would have left. That's why many people would have left. A great diaspora, right? A great exodus. This was just not happening for the Jewish people, right? This has happened all throughout history where people were forced to leave or fled because things got really, really bad. And they're just like, we're out of here. We're gone, right? And so you have this diaspora, right? And this is why we have, and I'm just going to jump ahead a little bit. This is why we have all these different spiritual systems around the world. This is why some people are just like, well, how is it that there's pyramids in Egypt and there's also pyramids in South America and there's pyramids here? How could these people have? It's like, because the people who created the pyramids also worked with and were in those other areas teaching the same lore, and that's why they erected those same things, those same sort of similar, not exactly the same. Each culture would have had their own way of expressing their religious or spiritual aspects of their communities, right? They would have done it differently. But nonetheless, it's not like over in South America, these people who built these great temples were not influenced or taught by the same people who built the great pyramids or would have built the great temples over in Atlantis, well, before it fell, right? So there's a connectedness there. It's not arbitrary. There is a reason why we see these hints in these different areas, in these different cultures, right? Okay, so let's see, is this the last paragraph? I just want to read the preface. Yeah, okay. So the particular group of priests bearing the tablets immigrated to South America, where they found a flourishing race. You guessed it, the Mayas, who remembered much of the ancient wisdom. Wait, hold on. Among these, the priests settled and remained. Among these, the priests settled and remained with those in the Mayans. In the 10th century, the Mayas had thoroughly settled the Yucatan, and the tablets were placed beneath the altar of one of the great temples of the sun god. After the conquest of the Mayas by the Spaniards, here we go. See this cycle? I don't mean to laugh, but I've had to get over a lot of this because a lot of this has torn me up in the inside. I've cried during meditations because I could feel the loss. And I've had to get over that because those tears can turn to fire, right? And I'm working on not being that person as much. So I have to sort of let go of some steam by laughing. Not laughing, chuckling, not laughing. But so once again, okay, so we have the Mayas, where Mayas had thoroughly settled the Yucatan, right? So before this, they had not settled the Yucatan. They were founded by these priests, and these priests taught them all that they knew. And then afterwards, they settled the Yucatan, right? So you could almost deduce that this information allows people to rise up and do great things. Well, let's go back to Atlantis. When Atlantis fell, Thoth and his followers, which we'll get into in the next chapter, went into Kemet and taught them how to rise up, and look what happened. Look what they created. The same in the Mayas, right? This is what this information does, right? This is where it gets really exciting when you start putting these connections together, because this is free information, right? You have to put in the time and the work. But learning and knowing and truly understanding this information is life-changing, which is why all throughout history, people who have really known this prior to us being somewhat free have been killed, tortured, not just killed. Killing is too swift. Tortured, right? Enslaved, right? It's powerful stuff that they don't want the average person knowing or the average group of people knowing. Heaven forbid. Heaven forbid. Let's see. So, and it says basically that they had they placed they placed the tablets under the altar of one of the great temples of the sun god. After the conquest of the Mayas by the Spaniards, the cities were abandoned and treasures of the temples gone. So the Spaniards came in, right, as they do, as that clan does, right? Because you've got these people who rule and control these various countries in the world, and at one point they all fell under one banner, right? They were all under the church, right? And the church was going forth, and it was domesticating the world. I believe this is what the Romans said, right? It was as the Romans, the Greeks. They were domesticating the world because anybody who believed this way were savage heathens, right? They didn't know what they were doing. They were ignorant, right? They were ignorant. And so they were domesticating the uncivilized, right? And you could say slaughter, you could say killing, you could say torture, you could say enslaving, you can put whatever you want to put on it, because those people wrote the history, and they're not going to say that some of their people found joy in torturing those people who knew this information, it may have been in their blood, right? It may have been a handed down skill craft of understanding this, handed down through the blood. And as we know, genetics tends to make things stronger. So some people would have had an adept nature at working with this energy, right? So you can't just, you'd have to destroy whole bloodlines in order to totally eradicate this from life and society. Like I said, that's why we have no more ancient Kemetic people. They wiped them out. They eliminated that bloodline. So we think. Could there be somebody running around with like the blood of Tutankhamun in him, King Tut? Could there be? Well, no, he didn't have any kids. But let's pick somebody else, right? It's possible. But they did a thorough extermination of these people to make sure that bloodline was not potent, right? I love the world we live in. All right. So this is the last. Well, there's two more paragraphs to the end of this preface. It should be understood that the Great Pyramid of Egypt has been and still is a temple of the initiation into the mysteries. Jesus, Solomon, Apollonius, and others were initiated there. The writer, who has a connection with the Great White Lodge, who also works through the pyramid priesthood, was instructed to recover and return to the Great Pyramid the ancient tablets. This, after adventures which need not be detailed here, was accomplished. Before returning them, he was given permission to translate and retain a copy of the wisdom engraved on the tablets. This was done in 1925, and only now has permission been given for part to be published. It is still expected that many will scoff, yet the true student will read between the lines and gain wisdom. If the light is in you, the light which is engraved in these tablets will respond. This book was published in I'm trying to see when and where. Hold on a second. Initially in 1993. And it was revised in 2006. So in 1993. Okay. Now, a word as to the material aspect of the tablets. They consist of 12 tablets. Now, I've not confirmed this. I'm just sort of reading here from the book, right? But I've not confirmed what the tablets look like or anything. Now, a word as to the material aspect of the tablets. They consist of 12 tablets of emerald green, formed from a substance created through alchemical transmutation. They are imperishable, resistant to all elements and substances. In effect, the atomic and cellular structure is fixed, no change ever taking place. In this respect, they violate the material law of ionization. Upon them are engraved characters in the ancient Atlantean language, characters which respond to attuned thought waves, releasing the associated mental vibration in the mind of the reader. The tablets are fastened together with hoops of gold-colored alloy suspended from a rod of the same material. So much for the material appearance. The wisdom contained therein is the foundation of ancient mysteries, and for the one who reads with eyes and mind, his wisdom shall be increased 100-fold. Read, believe or not, but read, and the vibration found herein will awaken a response in you. In cosmic harmony, Dorel, supreme voice of the Brotherhood. And that's just the preface, you guys and gals. That's like 3 pages, and it's like 2 pages, right? And then we go into the introduction to the Emerald Tablets, which I don't think I'm going to read. Well, I guess I could. It's only 1 page. So far, first off, anybody have any questions? Raise their hands or have any questions about any of this information that we're going over. If not, I will go in and I will read the introduction. It's only it's not that long. It's just that 1 page. It's just that 1 page from here to here. All right, we'll read the introduction. In the following pages, I will reveal some of the mysteries which as yet have only been touched upon lightly, either by myself or other teachers or students of truth. Man's search for understanding of the laws which regulate his life has been unending, yet always just beyond the veil which shields the higher planes from material man's vision, the truth has existed, ready to be assimilated by those who enlarge their vision by turning inward, not outward, in their search. That's a huge clue right there, you guys. Stop looking outside of yourself for truth or validation. Look inside of yourself. Ask the questions inside and see if the things in the outside world magnetically get drawn to you, and if they can be verified, or if it pairs up. Is it true that these deities weren't human at all? Which deities are you referring to, J Farmer? Are you referring to the Atlantean deities? Are you referring to the ancient Kemetic? Are you referring to the ancient Meso-Sumerian, which has got a colorful lore behind it? The ancient Sumerians, there's both. Okay, both. All right. I'm going to say that's a trick question. It's a great question. But it's one that's on everybody's mind, right? Because of the and the gods they worshipped. Okay, let's break that down. It's a great question. It's a yes and a no. It's a yes and a no. Why and how? Because one of the keys to working with this energy is balance, right? 2. The number 2 represents balance, right? So there is a yes and a no, right? There is a understanding that we all know there's a higher mind, a higher understanding, a higher energy, right? Let me get to the individual gods, Jay, first, before we go into the other ones. I need to explain the framework first. So I'm sure you've all heard of the Anunnaki, right? The Anunnaki, right? Which is they are the pantheon of gods in the ancient Sumerian, ancient Babylonian world, right? And it is believed that before they knew anything about time, about the planets, where they were, how many there were before all this. Because the reason that we have the calendar and hours and all this math and number keeping stuff is because of this information that they received long ago, long ago, right? So it is believed, this is what is said, is that these certain priests, these certain people, highly adept people, right, were able to receive information from these other deities, these other planes, these other realms. They received this information, right? They didn't necessarily create the calendar. They put it together after accumulating information from outside sources, right? So, are they alien? If you look at the definition of alien, it's twofold. You've got a person from another country who's an alien, right? And then you have something that is foreign to you, a foreigner, something foreign. It doesn't have to be a person. Let's just say it's not a person. Just say it's anything foreign, anything foreign to you that you don't understand, that's outside the scope or realm of your understanding, right? By that definition, yes, they would be alien, right? They'd be energies that you were not aware of, not constantly consciously aware of, that existed nonetheless, that did influence or communicate information, right? Does it make them aliens, little green guys in spaceships floating around, abducting people? No. That's what the humans do. The humans take the spiritual and they need something physical. They need a physical, like this is a lighter, you guys. They need something physical to grasp or to understand the spiritual. So they create these physical things, right? And that's what the humans do. They follow those physical things that they create, which are based on spiritual things, right? So were these energies alien? I don't like that term, but for the person who wants to understand it, yes, they were alien, but not little green men in spaceships, in aluminum foil outfits, cruising around the universe. No, they're higher planes of understanding, vibrations, higher vibrations, right? So that's why I said yes and no. Now, and the gods they worshipped. They did not worship aliens, right? I know there is some picture somewhere of a UFO ship on one of the walls it's one of the walls of a temple in Kemet, right? They're like, there's a spaceship. It's like, that's either photoshopped or it's not a spaceship, right? It was a solar disk, which represented, I don't know, right? But they didn't reverence aliens, right? Or worshipped aliens. So that would be a no. But the understanding of where this idea of aliens came from, right? That's why we have this idea of aliens. Now, does that mean that aliens don't exist in the universe? No, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying at all. We are not the only, God, I hope we are not the only life in the universe, right? There has to be other life in the universe, right? Maybe on a smaller level, on a larger level, like bacteria is a life, right? A cell in your skin, in your body, has a life, right? It's smaller than us, right? So therefore, we can't see it with the naked eye. But there would have to be life existing in the universe, but maybe you can't see it because you're not looking right. But then again, those people who believe in aliens need to. They don't just want to. They need to believe in something else outside of this planet. Then they give in or subscribe to this whole idea behind ETs and aliens and little green men in spacesuits with aluminum foil spacesuits and stuff. So yeah, but no, they didn't worship aliens. Thoth and Horus, or Tahuti and Heru? No. If anything, these if anything, Thoth and Heru would have been initially in the beginning would have been archetypes, right? And I hate to say in the beginning. Let's just say, for instance, you have an archetype of something. That's a hard one to try to explain because I'd have to use. Let's just say, for instance, here's a good one. Let's just say, for instance, you know, Orion's belt, the Orion constellation. So we have the Orion constellation, right? And the Orion constellation is supposed to represents a few different things. The Mesopotamians said it was Gilgamesh, the hero or the warrior. The Babylonians, I believe, they ascribe it to Marduk. The ancient Egyptians ascribe it to Auser or Asar or Osiris. They say that the Orion constellation is Asar because it represents the height of what we're supposed to ascribe to, and essentially that it's the height that which we're supposed to subscribe to. Let's leave it at that, right? Does that mean that Asar Auser didn't exist? Osiris. Does that mean that he didn't exist? No. It more so means at one point he existed and he took the embodiment of the archetype and therefore took that archetype into himself. And when he passed on, the people that he left on, his followers, would have then transferred his personality and characteristics into Orion, right? So these questions are really tricky because they're based on time, and time is subjective, right? Time is subjective to the topic at hand. So in the beginning, was Asar or Osiris Orion? Probably not. Did he not become Orion afterwards? Yes. That's as simple as there is no there are very few simple yes and no questions in the world. There's always those if, when, then, because time plays a factor. Like I said, time and topic play a factor in a question, which is why life gets very elusive and difficult to understand at times, because things are always moving, and you have to phrase your questions in such a way that you're allowing for an answer to come through, a specific answer instead of a vague one. I'm not saying that yours is vague. I'm just saying when you ask these questions and you go into a meditation, it's the same thing. You want to make it a bit more specific, bring a little bit of information or education so that when that message comes to you, it kind of makes sense, right? I hope that makes sense. I hope that I explained that. But Thoth and Heru, Tahuti and Heru would have not been aliens. They're more so they're archetypes. They represent something. And once you understand that archetype and what it means and you work with it, then you embody that archetype and you start to work with it more. You start to understand it more. You start to become more. This is where Thoth talks about the Thoth thrice born, right? Where when he lay in the halls of Amenti and his consciousness would flow into others, right? This is what he's talking about. So like I said, this book is huge when it comes down to giving insight into a lot of these hard questions and these hard answers, because there isn't an easy answer without understanding the framework or the background around it. And this information has been hidden and suppressed and has had racial inclinations for so long that only a few people actually know how to read this stuff and how to understand it. Everybody else is lost in the dark because it's not taught. But they would not have been aliens. If anything, these deities, they exist on an energetic level, not on this physical level that we live on, because ours is a very small level, but they exist on these greater grand energetic levels that exist in the universe and in space. And once you are able to center yourself, to clear the mind through meditation and all these other practices, do you allow yourself to become in sync with these vibrations? And that's when the fun starts, because then you start receiving information, images, thoughts, dreams, coincidences or synchronistic events start coming your way. All this stuff starts to, life becomes a little more interesting, should I say, and life wakes up around you because you have woken up to it. And so it becomes a very interesting road or path. I hope that answers your question. I know it wasn't direct. It was sort of indirect. I've been known for being like the Sphinx or Haramakhet, where I answer things in riddles. I don't mean to, but sometimes answering a question directly can't be done. You have to answer with background and then bringing that background back to the focal point to answer the original question. I hope that helps. Okay, so let's see, were we reading? Oh yeah, so we're gonna read the introduction, right? Oh, thank you. Like I said, I hope that helped. I've thought about this a lot. I've worked with the ancient Sumerian, ancient Sumerian energy. I've worked with the Anunnaki. I really do like the Anunnaki. The energy pairs really well with the ancient Kemetic, the ancient Egyptian energy, but it's different. It's a little bit different. And when I say Anunnaki, that name, even though some people relate it to like aliens, the name actually means the followers of Anu, right? And let me explain that. Anu, A-N-U, right, is the god. So how you spell Anunnaki is A-N-U. Let me get this right. A-N-U, N-N, wait, A-N-U, N-A-K-I or N-N-K-I. Anunnaki, right? The first three letters of that name, Anu, is the main deity in the ancient Meso-Sumerian pantheon. Anu, the god Anu, right? It kind of sounds like to make a new start, right? Something new. Anu, A-N-U, is Anu is the head deity. Ki, in at the end of Anunnaki, the Ki represents earth. It is the word meaning earth or earth energy, right? So I don't know what the Nu would mean. So the Anu, the Naki, I'm not sure what that would mean, but Ki means earth. So if you looked at the word, if you had worked with the energy and you even began to understand it, you would see, okay, the Anunnaki had something to do with Anu, and Ki meaning earth energy, which Ea, the Mesopotamian god of water and wisdom and magic, Ea, his name was also Enki to the Babylonians, right? Enki, E-N-K-I, which meant in earth, right? The Sumerians called him Ea, E-A, or I-A, and the Babylonians called him Enki, right? Meaning in earth. So that name, the Anunnaki, has something to do with Anu. It also has something to do with Enki or Ea, right? And in ancient Sumer, Enki was one of the main deities who helped create the world in Anu's stead, right? On behalf of Anu, his father. In later lore, they added Enki had a brother named Enlil, right? So you had Enlil and you had Enki, who were the two sons of Anu, right? In later lore, in Babylonian, and from what I understand in some ancient Jewish lore, Enlil and Enki helped Enlil create the world, or Enki created the earth. Enlil governed the wind, and Anu rested in his throne in heaven, right? In heaven. And there's this whole drama between Enki and Lil, the Great Flood. It's a great story. The Great Flood, and how Enlil was okay with the Great Flood, wanted to wash away humanity because he felt it just needed a great reboot. And Enki actually had a follower that he whispered, prepare for the Great Flood, right? Whispered basically, just make sure you and your followers are prepared for this because shit's going downhill, right? And so that's the Babylonian aspect of it. But in ancient Sumer, it was a little bit different. Once again, I hope that makes sense. Let's see. Okay, so man's search for understanding of the laws which regulate his life has been unending, yet always just beyond the veil which shields the higher planes from man's material vision. The truth has existed, ready to be assimilated by those who enlarge their visions by turning inward, not outward, in their search. In the silence of the material senses lies the key to the unveiling of wisdom. I'm going to reread this. In the silence, this is a lot, doesn't it? In the silence of the material senses lies the key to the unveiling of wisdom. He who talks does not know. He who knows does not talk. The highest knowledge is unutterable, for it exists as an entity in planes which transcend all material words or symbols. So this goes back to what I was saying before. For the highest knowledge is unutterable, meaning it can't be spoken. For it exists, the highest knowledge, it exists as an entity in planes which transcend all material worlds or symbols. Now, if you were reading this the first time, like I read it the first time, you would just read it and be like, okay, all right, yeah. And you just keep reading, right? But if you've read this once or twice, you've done some other work, you've come to some other conclusions, and you came back to this, like right now, this is waking up to me. I'm reading that, and I'm just like, this sort of answers the question I had a minute ago, and it also answers Jay Farmer's question about if these were actual aliens, right? So Jay, your answer, right there, right? Right there. Knowledge is unutterable, and it exists as an entity in planes which transcend all material words or symbols. So basically, the highest knowledge, the highest wisdom, the highest knowing is unutterable because it can only be experienced, or from what I've heard this word, inexperienced. It can only be experienced inside of you. It's powerful stuff. I mean, it'd be like if someone was trying to explain a concept to you. Nice, Jay. I'm glad you got that. Awesome. Yeah, no, I mean, we all know the truth. We are all a part of the truth. That's why I love this book. We are all a part of the all, or the one, right? That is truth, right? And when you read or hear this stuff, it makes sense, doesn't it? It just makes sense, even if you didn't think about it. You're just like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Now, granted, you're going to have those that are going to have firewalls up or protectors because they already have a belief system and they don't want something coming in disrupting that. They've spent their whole life believing in this other construct, and so they'll challenge this. Great, fine. But in the inside of them, I'll guarantee you, there was a little fire or a flame, or their little voice came out and said, oh, and they smited that little voice and said, you need to shut up. Nobody's talking to you. Nobody asked you for your opinion, little voice, right? So, yeah, but there's a huge key right there. All symbols are but keys to doors leading to truths. And many times the door is not opened because the key seems so great that the things which are beyond it are not visible. If we can understand that all keys, all material symbols are manifestations, are but extensions of a great law of truth, we will begin to develop the vision which will enable us to penetrate beyond the veil. And the veil is that thin piece of reality that we've created, or that was created for us, that obstructs the true vision of the actual thing that we're looking for. Let's see. Okay. All things in all universes move according to law, and the law which regulates the movement of the planets is no more immutable than the law which regulates the material expressions of man. And I reread that. All things in all universes move according to law, and the law which regulates the movement of the planets is no more immutable than the law which regulates the material expressions of man. One of the greatest of all cosmic laws is that which is responsible for the foundation of man as a material being. The great aim of the mystery schools of all ages has been to reveal the workings of the law which connect man, the material, and man, the spiritual. The connecting link between the material man and the spiritual man is the intellectual man, for the mind partakes of both the material and immaterial qualities. And I reread this because, once again, profound. The connecting link between the material man and the spiritual man is the intellectual man, the mind. Not smart, not college smart, not university smart. That's not what we're talking about. It's not intelligence. But it's the mind, right? The mind is a door between the physical and the imphysical, the immaterial, the non-physical. The aspirant for higher knowledge, meaning you, the aspirant for higher knowledge must develop the intellectual side of his nature and so strengthen his will that he is able to concentrate all the powers of his being on and in the plane he desires. I'm going to reread that. The aspirant for higher knowledge must develop the intellectual side of his nature and so strengthen his will that he is able to concentrate all the powers of his being on and in the plane he desires. Meaning, you have to learn how to use your mind to place yourself. And this is higher stuff. I've not really done this, at least not consciously. And some of these things you will have done unconsciously, but not known the techniques to do it consciously. And books and texts like this actually help you learn how to do things like that. I'm not going to say this is astral projection, but more so manifestation of yourself somewhere else or in another environment to cause an effect or a change. The great search for light, life, and love the great search for light, life, and love only beings on the material plane. I have no idea I think that's a typo. The great search for life, and love only beings on the material plane. Carried to its ultimate, its final goal is complete oneness with the universal consciousness. The foundation in the material is the first step. Then comes the higher goal of spiritual attainment. So basically it's saying this great search for light, life, and love is a material plane possession. when carried to its ultimate goal, when you take that further, its final goal is complete oneness with the universal consciousness, with the order of it all. As they're talking about earlier in the book, about how everything in the universe is ordered. Everything is ordered under the one or the all. So you're wanting to become one with the ordered so that your life flows in this ordered way, right? If you've ever failed at anything, it's because it was most likely unordered, or you were uneducated enough to bring it to fruition and you need to learn more, either one or the other, right? In the following pages, I will give an interpretation of the Emerald Tablets and their secret, hidden, and esoteric meanings. Concealed in the words of Thoth are many meanings that do not appear on the surface. Light of knowledge brought to bear upon the tablets will open many new fields for thought. Read and be wise, but only if the light of your own consciousness awakens the deep-seated understanding which is an inherent quality of the soul. In the threefold light, Doriel. And that's where we're gonna stop. We'll start up with the history of Thoth the Atlantean in the next episode, which is, stay tuned for that one. That's a great one. So once again, that is the Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean. Great book. If you are going to buy this book, I would hope that you would support our channel. I am a Amazon affiliate, and I sell or have offered some tools and books, and this is one of them. So if you would support the channel, I would greatly appreciate it. It helps me to reinvest those proceeds into the program in order to make it better, produce more content, better content, and things of that nature. So I would greatly appreciate that. Thank you. So we're gonna stop for Q&A, questions and answers, just to see if anybody has a question at all. I think we've been live streaming here. It's probably been an hour or so. So I'm gonna try to keep these at about an hour. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. That melts my heart. I'm glad this information is being well received. Sometimes when you do this stuff, either people don't stick around or they jump in and they jump out, and then you have some people who just totally sort of just unsubscribe because it's not what they were looking for, which I totally understand. But if you have any questions, go ahead and let me know. You can go ahead and drop them in the chat. You can type them up and just let me know. We also have, I have a YouTube channel. The YouTube channel is great. We reached 100 subscribers. We're actually at 136 subscribers right now. And so that was a huge milestone after having the channel up for about a couple of years. So I was able to get the Ancient Tree of Life as a YouTube channel name. So if you go to youtube.com/Ancient Tree of Life, or if you just look up Ancient Tree of Life on YouTube, you can pull up our channel. Go ahead and check out the videos. I have them sorted in playlist. I've tried to organize it as best as I can, fitting certain niches. But if you guys are wanting to see anything, or if the YouTube channel doesn't seem very very navigation oriented, let me know. I did stop for a minute because I felt like I was not coming across new information. Sometimes you stagnate. Sometimes you were trying to figure something out. And I didn't want to just create videos just to have videos. I wanted to create content that was meaningful, valuable, and well received. Like I said, if you have any questions, go ahead and drop a comment. You can also follow on Instagram. I know Jay's already on Instagram, so thanks, Jay. But you can follow on Instagram at Ancient Tree of Life. Also on Facebook at Ancient Tree of Life, facebook.com/Ancient Tree of Life. I think I'm going to start a discussion group on there. So if you're on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, so just making sure it was actually streaming. You may want to check out the Facebook group that I will be starting, and I'll send a link out for that So it'll probably be in the next like week or so, maybe sooner. We just changed up, or I just changed up the website, the ancienttreeoflife.com website. It's a little different now. I hope it's a little bit more exciting. I'm wanting to start a learning group where we actually teach some of these. We talk about, discuss, and teach some of these things. And so if you head on over to ancienttreeoflife.com, you can go ahead and subscribe. Go ahead and check out the content, but also subscribe. And when the learning system is out, we'll go ahead and I'll contact you. It's going to be comprised of heavy Egyptian, heavy ancient Kemetic, because that's what my forte is. That's what I'm all about. But also using some of the ancient Sumerian, the ancient Sumerian learning systems, which were given popularity by the ancient Babylonians. And I actually work with one of the authors that writes a lot of ancient Mesopotamian lore, ancient Mesopotamian and Babylonian lore. And his name is Joshua Free. And his work was, it's deep, it's heavy. I would not recommend jumping over to that right now. I would say let us walk together over to that. Because if you mix too many systems together, then it can be problematic. And that night was just like to stair step it. But yeah, so check us out on ancienttreeoflife.com. Go ahead and check out the content. Definitely get on over on YouTube and check out the content there and subscribe. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to mention. I guess that's about it. Like I said, if you do decide to purchase the book, it's on Amazon. It's not that much. It's like maybe $20 at the most. It's probably not even that. For about $20. It helps the channel. And it also allows me to know if I should continue to like offer like supplies and stuff like that. Like if it's something that you guys are interested in. So definitely let me know. So once again, if you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the comment box. But if not, I think we're going to wind it down and say this was a good Sunday, a good day to replenish the self. We're going to be talking more on the Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean in the next weeks coming forward, probably in the next few days. I'll be posting content. But this is going to be one of the discussion topics that we're on, simply because I think it helps to stair step us into the world of ancient Egypt and who they were, how they may have thought, which is the most important thing. One of the things that will hinder people or a person or people from totally understanding the world of the ancient Egyptians is that they won't walk the path. They won't walk in the footsteps of those people. They won't think like an Egyptian. They won't walk like an Egyptian. They won't believe like an Egyptian. They won't think like an Egyptian. They won't do that. What they want to do is read something in a book and say, oh yeah, I heard that. Oh yeah, that was cool. Right? But it's more than that. It's more than that. Because a society, a group of people would not have existed or lasted for tens of thousands of years off of something so surface. They lived it, breathed it, ate it, thought it, washed, rinse, repeated it, right? This was their way of life. And while we're looking back on it as a sort of entertainment for the mind sort of thing, this was something very real to them. And there were huge rewards and benefits from understanding it. So these so-called like Egyptologists who are assessing something from an external perspective, they will never know the true secrets that these pyramids or that these people held. Perfect example, they're trying to date the pyramids and they're trying to date the Sphinx. And they did this before and they were called out to be wrong. And it's because they wanted to say, okay, they wanted to slap a label, an easy label on what these ancient people could have actually done. And they didn't walk the walk. They didn't get involved. They didn't learn the Kemetic spiritual system. Because if they did, they would totally understand, or at least begin to understand, what all these things meant that were in ancient Kemet. And then they would have learned what all this other stuff throughout the world that may have been linked to ancient Kemet may have been all about. Like, what were the pyramids actually used for? It says right in the Emerald Tablets what they were used for, right? It says right in there what they were used for, what Thoth used it for. But the problem is, if you're looking for a direct link, if you're looking for it to say, Thoth used the pyramid to transfer his consciousness into others, or that's a loose interpretation. I'm not saying that's what he did. But if we're to say Thoth went used the pyramid in order to go into the great halls of Amenti, so that he could free himself from life and death, right? People want to know, well, how and why and all these little specifics. It's like, no. That's not how it works. That's not how they protected. That's not how the priests and the pyramid priests protected that information. They didn't just tell anybody, because what would happen is evil people would get a hold of it. These evil people that run the world, that control the world, if they had access to it, we didn't have a shot in hell. But because they're not even taking the time to look into it, because it doesn't interest them, it leaves those secrets left for the true archaeologists, us, the true, not Egyptologists, spiritualists, to investigate, research, confirm, and share, right? So that we can, like Thoth did, lift it up the civilization of others. And that's what it's all about right now, you guys. We need to lift one another up, because there's some shit going on in the world. These guys are crazy. These guys are crazy that are running the world. They got the screws loose and marbles all over the place. They're crazy. And we need to prepare for some heinous stuff that's about to go on. If not, we're going to be left on Atlantis when it falls into the freaking ocean. Right? We got to lift one another up. We got to create communities. But in order to do that, you have to have an understanding. In order to get into this community, you have to have an understanding. If not, you're not serving the higher purpose. And I'm going to leave it at that. So once again, thanks for coming out. I appreciate J Pharma for coming out. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Remember to check us out on YouTube, also on our website. And if you pick up the Emerald Tablets, I would really encourage you to pick this up on Amazon. Head on over to the ancienttreeoflife.com website and click on shop, and then it will take you actually to my store that has a metaphysical section, and you'll be able to purchase it from there. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. But thanks for coming out. Have a great night. I appreciate all of you, especially Jay, for coming out. And if you have any messages, go ahead and direct message me, send me a message, send me an email on the website, and I'm more than happy to talk to you, work with you, and help you see the light as well. So once again, my name is RaEA with the Ancient Tree of Life channel. Just want to say have a good night, Emhotep, and love you all. Light and peace. All right, bye-bye. Later, Jay. Thanks for coming out. I appreciate it.